We're leading up to the end of the year, so maybe this is well timed. Here are some tax jokes from Reader's Digest. Give them credit. It's time to pay my income tax, and brother, that's no joke, for after paying the IRS, I find I are broke. How about this one? As April 15 draweth nigh, my spirits start to droop. A poor downtrodden slave am I, in short, an income poop. And the last one, income tax is almost due, and this makes me today another shaking member of the IOUSA. Oh, well. Well, where did tax come from? Who do we have to blame? Well, if you're going to go way back, way back, at tax time, you can blame Moses. Moses was the one who began the practice of collecting taxes. And so he ordered that a tax be levied against the Israelites, so much ahead to support the tabernacle. We know that in the New Testament, according to Scripture, Jesus even paid a tabernacle tax. And so why should we be excused from paying taxes if Moses and Jesus paid them? And so if we look at the Old Testament, the first chapter of Exodus, we have, and even the 13th chapter, we have the reason and who should pay taxes. Moses takes a census of the people of Israel, and each man is numbered and has a ransom for his soul, and that is, according to the Living Bible, it says $50. Here in the New Testament we have drachma. We also have shekel. And so we have this payment that has to be made. It's not a lot of money, but everybody has to pay it. And the thing is, it doesn't matter how much money you have, whether you're rich or poor, you pay the same amount. Why would that be? Because to God, everybody is the same. And so it didn't matter. You are making atonement for your sin. You're going to use this money for the care of the tabernacle, and so you pay it. And then who pays? Well, typically what they would do is look at people 20 and over, men 20 and over. And why 20 and over? Because you had to be 20 to be in the army. And so if you were 20 years old, you were part of the chosen men, and they even listed in Judges how many were chosen. They list thousands and even hundreds. They tell you what tribe they are from. And because of that, they had to pay tax from 20 years old and upward. Because 20 years old and upward reflected the number of people that would be eligible for the army. And so we have this tax that is talked about, that is levied, that is paid in the Old Testament. And so we have this God now who has decided that all his people are the same. He's not a respecter of persons, rich or poor, tall or short, fat or thin. You pay the same tax. And so we know that even in Jesus' day, the tabernacle tax was paid the same way. Now, the tabernacle tax was not the tax collected by the tax collector. That was a different tax. That was a property tax. This is a tabernacle tax. This is for the upkeep of the tabernacle. And so we have this tax being paid even by Jesus. It says in 1 Peter 1, for you know that it was not with perishable things such as silver or gold that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed to you from your ancestors, but with the precious blood of Christ. See, we don't have this tax level on us now. We have an offering. We have a tithe. It is free and open. You give whatever you choose to give. There is no temple tax that is required by every one of you. Now, because why? Because our ransom, our tax, was paid for by Jesus dying on the cross. And because he died on the cross, that is our ransom. He paid it all for us. So we don't have this coinage that is levied against us all the same, no matter how much we have or we make. That's all basically the way the Old Testament worked. But now we have this New Testament story coming out of Matthew. Jesus is in what really was his hometown. Yes, he was born in Nazareth, and yes, he grew up there. But he really made his headquarters in Capernaum. That's where he stayed most of the time. And so when he's there, people didn't want to come up to him and ask him for tax money. They revered him too much. Or maybe they feared what he was going to say. But who do they talk to? Peter. Why? Peter was the leader. And so they say to Peter, does your teacher not pay the temple tax? Now, did Peter stop and say, Jesus, do we pay the temple tax? Jesus, are you going to pay that temple tax this year? I knew you were late last year. Are we going to pay it this year? I think we paid double 3 years ago. There was no conversation, at least written down, about that. So Jesus is at his headquarters, and Peter is going to answer for him. This annual temple tax is being asked and being collected, and so Jesus, being so mighty, providing all these miracles, they feared talking to him about it, so they talked to Peter. Does your teacher not pay the temple tax? And Peter says what? Yes. Yes, he pays the tax. He didn't ask Jesus, did he pay the tax? He just said yes. So now Peter goes in the house. Jesus, being Jesus, knows exactly what Peter's conversation was. How unnerving would that be? To walk in the house to somebody that actually knew what you had said. Anybody nervous about that? Rhonda's nervous about that. I would be nervous about that. So we have this conversation then. Jesus comes right up to Peter. What do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of the earth take custom or taxes? From their sons or from strangers? Now, he knows what he said to the tax people. He knows what Peter has said. And Peter answers him. He says the tax collectors. Yes, certainly. The tax collectors is where the temple tax, that's where they send their money. Of course, Peter knows he has said, yes, certainly my master pays the tribute. Why don't you speak to him about it? But they're too afraid. So we have this conversation, this dialogue going on between Peter and Jesus. Peter knows what he said. He doesn't know that Jesus knows what he said. But Jesus also knows what he said. So why did Jesus pay the tax? Did he have to pay the tax? Well, he says to Peter, he wants Peter to know not only he's going to pay the tax, but why he's paying the tax. And so what do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of the earth take customs or taxes? From their sons or strangers? And this is how we know that Jesus knew what Peter's conversation was. And so Peter says to him pretty quickly, from strangers. They don't take it from their sons. Jesus says to him, well, okay, if that's the case then, their sons must be free of the tax. Now, Peter, I wonder if Peter's mind is working here. This is all in Matthew. So Jesus is trying to show Peter that the royal family is exempt from taxes. If you are in the family of royalty, you don't pay that tax. So he, Jesus, as the Son of God, wouldn't owe the tax because he's part of the royalty. The sons are free. Christ is the Son of God. What's it say in Malachi? Malachi 3:1 says, behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me, and the Lord whom you seek shall suddenly come to his temple. His temple. Jesus says what? In my Father's house. Take these things out of my Father's house. My Father's house is not a house of merchandise. We know that Jesus uses his house, my house. The tabernacle was his. So if it is Jesus' house, and he's a faithful son, then he's not obligated to pay the tax. That's what he wants Peter to see. The immunity applies only to Christ because it's God's children. We're freed by grace. We're freed from that slavery to sin by grace. So he says, let every soul be subject to higher powers. Our tax is paid from Jesus, who died on the cross. We're free from grace, but we're to render to Caesar things that are Caesar's. That's where that scripture comes from. What do we pay? Well, whose picture's on the coin? Caesar's. Well, then you render to Caesar what is Caesar's. So Jesus had an assignment for Peter. He says, nevertheless, so we don't offend them. Not because I actually owe the tax, but because we don't want to offend anybody here, I want you to go to the sea and cast out a hook and take the first fish that you catch. And when you've opened its mouth, you will find a coin in there. You're going to find money in the fish's mouth. Take it and give it to them for your taxes and mine. I don't know Ernie fishes a lot. Tom Morgan has fished a lot. Maybe many of others have fished a lot. Have you ever caught a fish with coins in its mouth? Have you ever tried to pay your taxes that way? Well, here you go. Between now and April 15th, go fishing. Jesus' method of getting tax money is quite unique. We see that here. But Peter followed the command. He goes fishing, and he catches a fish. And the first fish he catches, he opens his mouth, and sure enough, a 4 drachma coin is in the mouth. Now, this would also tell you Jesus is called the second Adam because Adam actually had this same power. He had dominion over all the animals, the birds of the sky, the fish of the sea. Adam had all of that power, but he lost it when he sinned. Jesus, being sinless, has the power. Now, we don't know whether he knew the coin was there or he put the coin there, but the coin was there. Why pay the tax, Jesus? Why pay the tax? Because Jesus didn't want to offend them. And he also didn't want everybody to know that he was the Son of God because it wasn't the right time. Peter knew it. Remember, Peter knew that he was the Son of God, but he didn't want everybody to know it right then. So Jesus picked his time and place to let that information out. This is a place that he wanted to pay the tax, not to offend them, and also not to let them know that it was his Father's house, so he didn't have to pay tax. Notice something else. Jesus didn't even have the money to pay the tax. If he would have had the money to pay the tax, wouldn't he said, well, here's the 4 drachma coin, go pay the tax. He didn't have the money. Jesus was a man of poverty, and he wants us to know that he was a man that was impoverished. Well, how about Judas? Didn't Judas have the bag of money? Why didn't he just ask Judas for the money? Because he never took any money from Judas for something personal. That was money for their food. That was money for their subsistence. He didn't ask Judas for that. So what's he do? He relies on the Father to pay the tax by having a coin in the fish's mouth. Now, he could have had an angel bring him the money. Maybe an angel actually put the coin in the fish's mouth. We don't know. But either way, either Jesus knew the coin was there or he put the coin there. But nonetheless, the coin was there. And that's how they paid the tax. And we know that Jesus was taken care of by others. In Luke it says, and Joanna, the wife of Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others who ministered unto him Jesus, used their subsistence. So people took care of Jesus. He didn't have a donkey full of stuff and a bag of money. He worked through others because God led him places. Judas didn't pay it for him. So Christ obtained the money from the fish's mouth. However it got there, he knew it was there. That's the miracle of the coin in the fish's mouth. It's one that's talked about some and joked about a lot, but he chose out of his poverty to get Peter, who was a fisherman, to catch a fish. Now, he could have received it many ways, but he received the tax money and didn't offend and paid what was due. He also paid what was due according to his Father to save us. We have the opportunity today to remember that time in the upper room where he taught us Holy Communion. Again, this was days before he was going to go to the cross. And so we remember that event here today. We can remember it that he saved us. He paid a ransom for us. You hear that in songs. You hear that in poetry, that Jesus was the ransom for our souls. We get grace. We get saved because of what Jesus did for us. And so we have this opportunity today to take part in the new covenant. The new covenant, which is that Jesus laid his life down for you and for me and for everyone. And so we have this covenant that we believe in, that Jesus Christ is the one who saved our life. And so as you come today, remember that time when you were saved. Remember that time when you felt the power of Jesus' blood being shed for you, and that you Even though times you may forget it, sometimes you may not feel worthy of it, you always are. You are always worthy. You are always accepted. You are always loved. You are always cared for. And Jesus is always there to help you whenever you need it. The lowest of lows, the highest of highs. And maybe today we get to remember that as we take Holy Communion. So the ushers will come and have you come down. You'll kneel. You'll take the bread from me and hold it. And then Rhonda will come with the cup, and you can dip it in the cup. It's called intinction. Everybody is eligible that's here. You don't have to have the membership card. You don't have to be a member of the church. You don't have to be baptized. All you have to do is be willing to come in a reverent way and receive Holy Communion. First, we'll have Rhonda and Cindy come, and then the ushers will direct the rest of you.